Yeah.
So, yeah, but man, I guess to blow it up.
Well, there's mixed things. There's mixed things.
So, the mirror, if you
Yeah.
look at it
Did I-
real close,
did I show you?
you can actually see the people looking into the mirror, like the people that he's talking to, they're talking.
All the people that they're talking to.
Yeah, look real
Oh,
close.
I didn't.
You look real
I
close,
couldn't
even there,
look at
there's 4 people in that mirror. Oh. They say it might be him himself,
I didn't look that closely.
Yeah.
I just thought there were people in it.
but one of the speculations was that this
Oh, yeah.
actually isn't, this was.
All right, Bill, you're up and running. I'm heading out.
That's pretty interesting.
Ah, welcome to Renaissance Times. I so appreciate all the Renaissance artists. As I've been studying them, many of them I knew something about before, but I've studied more in preparation for this class, and I just thinking about this last couple of days. I'm saddened by the lack of interest that evangelical Christians in general have in the arts. Somehow back in the early part of the 20th century, when Bible-believing Christians decided to divorce themselves from society, I guess, they divorced themselves from all the arts as well. And it's really sad because there's so much to be appreciated, so much worship of God that can occur in looking simply at art. So I hope that you've gained a sense of that, and maybe you will appreciate art more than you have before. Let's ask God's blessing on our time together. Father, thank you that we can, because of the internet, as many evil things that come from that, there's so many good things too. And one of them is that we could find pictures of all these different art that all these different artists have drawn, and we can listen to music, all those things, and appreciate the talents that you have given them. And I pray that you would encourage each one of us, each one who may view this lecture, to use the talents that you have given each of us in them as well, because in using our gifts, we bring glory to you. And we pray that would be true tonight. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, last time we were looking at the Ghent altarpiece. We saw the outside of it. Let me go back to a picture of it. Just remind you. Nope, I guess I didn't have a picture of it except on the video. But we'll see at the beginning of the next video is going to look at what's on the inside, which is the more familiar part of it. Dan was just telling me that in this, and I admit to you, I did not look real carefully at this mirror image that is in the painting we looked at. This one, a very famous painting by Jan van Eyck. But in that mirror that's in the center, Dan was pointing out that I thought it was just the backs of the people that are facing us in the portrait, but Dan was pointing out that not only did he paint that, but he painted other people that were on the other side facing them. Who would go to that much detail to even think to do that? But you look real careful. I can think the blue, is that somebody who's facing them? Remarkable. These guys were something else. All right.
They were saying that this may be his wife may have died, and we're speculating that possibly, because if you notice half the picture is dark, the other half is light. See how he's like, I know that was kind of tough.
He's,
But
yeah.
if you look at the candles and the chandelier, there's only one candle lit. All the other ones are burned out.
Huh.
And they were just saying that they think that there are other things too, but that was the one that kind of stuck with me. And maybe she had passed away and this was.
It looks like she's pregnant, isn't she?
Yeah, that was another thing too, was there was about childbirth or something like that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, he's dark like he's in mourning.
Yeah.
She's
Oh.
like the light in his way.
You can see his face is real gloomy.
And I imagine for every one of these paintings, you could probably find people that have examined and come up with all kinds of information. That's really interesting, Dan. You know, I don't know what,
I'm not sure what you talk about.
Those are like sandals or like the cloth, what do they call those,
Like father.
you know, those wooden shoes that they wore in Holland and that?
Oh.
Those are those type of, you know, sandals. The dog, if you look at the dog, it's amazing how perfect the dog looks.
Yeah.
And her red shoes are in the background in front of that chair. It's weird that you put two random pairs of
Back
shoes
here?
there that they're not even wearing. Yeah, those are her shoes, I think,
Huh.
red.
it's hard to see on the screen.
Women's shoes.
Yeah, they're kind of under. Yeah. Wow. Good research. And I get, you must have done some research too. Oh. All right. Well, let's go on to the altar of Ghent, the Ghent altarpiece by Van Eyck. Past what we looked at last time. And here's we'll be looking at the inside of the altarpiece.
Let's open it up and take a look at
We're struck immediately by an explosion of rich colors.
And this is color that's really possible because of the luminousness of oil paint, especially in the way that the Northerners handled it.
So there's an incredible sort of material beauty that is very palpable as soon as one opens it up, and it's struck immediately by this very large figure in the center of God the Father, dressed like a king with a papal crown on his head, a crown at his feet to show that he's King of Kings, holding a scepter, a symbol of power.
That scepter is exquisite. It's so clearly rendered out of rock crystal, and the crown at his feet is an amazing display of jewelry design, jewelry making. And if we look past the exterior of the crown to the inside of it, we can actually see how it was hammered from the inside out.
We have a theme running through here of God's saving grace, God's saving power, his plan to forgive and redeem mankind.
That issue is so critical here, and this is one of the early great examples of God being remade in what we will come to know as the Renaissance, as opposed to the earlier medieval God that was wrathful, was terrifying. Here we have a God that is a God of forgiveness, and it is an expression of the humanist tradition that is developing in Europe at this time.
And on either side of God, we have on the left Mary, but also wearing a crown, looking like a queen. Crown has roses and lilies in it, and on the right, St. John the Baptist. And to go back to that theme of God's redemption and forgiveness, in that gold embroidery, which we have in that tapestry behind God the Father, an image of the pelican. In the medieval tradition, the pelican, if it's young or starving, it was believed to pick at its own flesh to feed its young.
This notion of God making this extraordinary sacrifice is explicitly rendered here.
On the left, we have the angels singing.
Did you take a look at the hand? I don't know if I can back it up here or not. I don't see how to back it up, but just the detail of the hand and this is remarkable.
We have them on the right, the angels playing music in heaven, so we have this not only incredibly rich environment visually of gold and jewels, also the sounds of heaven.
If you look at the choir, and look at the richly carved furniture of the music stand, and on the right of the organ, I imagine this is some indication of what the original frame of this painting might have looked like.
One of the things I read about is that each of the angels wears a different crown. On the left, as they sing, and make slightly different faces, so you can tell the different notes that they're each singing.
Even though their faces are actually quite similar, they become a kind of, I imagine, a kind of ideal of beauty in Van Eyck's imagination.
And then when we go a little bit further out, we see the panels of Adam and Eve, who are represented very realistically, very sort of deeply human in in their bodies, not at all idealized the way that we would see with Masaccio or the artists of the Italian Renaissance. Of course, the artists of the Northern Renaissance don't have ancient Greek and Roman sculpture everywhere to look at, which would suggest the tradition of idealizing or making perfect of the human body. And so here, Adam and Eve look like two real people that Van Eyck had modeled for him in the studio.
You have throughout this painting a kind of grandeur, and then you have these two figures naked, seem so vulnerable, they seem so out of place, they seem so mismatched. This painting is really about God's willingness to reach out to man in all of his imperfection.
Yeah, it kind of struck me earlier what he said about the change from how God was portrayed in medieval times to in Renaissance times, how in medieval times he was always pictured as a wrathful God. And now in the especially Northern Renaissance, they begin picturing God as reaching out to man, as a forgiving God. And you see how that is setting up then the Reformation, maybe even as a part of the Reformation that occurs, that we'll be getting to after we finish the Renaissance. Whoops. What happened? Oh, I hit the wrong thing, I guess. We get to watch it again because I don't see how to make it go forward. Sorry about that. Well, if you missed anything the first time.
So let's open up and take a look inside.
We're struck immediately by an explosion of rich colors.
And this is color that's really possible because of the luminousness of oil paint, especially in the way that the Northerners handled it.
So there's an incredible sort of material beauty that is very palpable as soon as one opens it up, and it's struck immediately by this very large figure in the center of God the Father, dressed like a king with a papal crown on his head, a crown at his feet to show that he's King of Kings, holding a scepter, a symbol of power.
That scepter is exquisite. It's so clearly rendered out of rock crystal, and the crown at his feet
Transparent.
is an amazing display of jewelry design, jewelry making. And if we look past the exterior of the crown to the inside of it, we can actually see how it was hammered from the inside out.
We have a theme running through here of God's saving grace, God's saving power, his plan to forgive and redeem mankind.
That issue is so critical here, and this is one of the early great examples
Well, I
of
pointed out
God
the
being
Pelican,
made
you know, there are other-
to know as the Renaissance, as opposed to the earlier medieval God
too.
that was wrathful, was terrifying. Here we have a God that is a God of forgiveness, and it is an expression of the humanist tradition that is developing here at this time.
And on either side of God, we have on the left Mary, but also wearing crown, looking like a queen. Crown has roses and lilies in it,
Reading a
and on the right, St. John the Baptist. And to go back to that theme of God's
John the Baptist has a
redemption
book
and
also.
forgiveness, in that gold embroidery, which we have in that tapestry behind God the Father, an image of a pelican. In the medieval tradition, the pelican
I wish I knew what all these words
young were starving
meant.
believed to pick at its own flesh to feed its young.
This notion of God making this extraordinary sacrifice is explicitly rendered here.
On the left, we have the angels singing in heaven, and on the right, the angels playing music in heaven. So we have this not only incredibly rich environment visually of gold and jewels, also the sounds of heaven.
If you look at the choir, and look at the richly carved furniture of music stand, and on the right of the organ, I imagine this is some indication of what the original frame
One of
was.
those symbols.
One of the things that I love is that each of the angels wears a different crown. On the left, as they sing, it makes slightly different faces, so you can tell the different notes that they're each singing.
Even though their faces are actually quite similar, because they become a kind of, I imagine, a kind of ideal of beauty, that imagination.
And then when we go a little bit further out, we see the panels of Adam and Eve who are represented very realistically, very deeply human in their body,
She's
not at
correct,
all
she's holding
utilized the way that we would see.
rather
with
nondescript,
Boccaccio
like
or the artists of the Italian Renaissance. Of course, the artists of the Northern Renaissance don't have ancient Greek and Roman sculpture everywhere to look at, which would suggest the tradition of idealizing or making perfect the human body. And so here, Adam and Eve look like two real people that Van Eyck had modeled for him in the studio.
You have throughout this painting a kind of grandeur, and then you have these two figures naked, seem so vulnerable, they seem so out of place, they seem so mismatched. This painting is really about God's willingness to reach out to man in all of his imperfection.
Exactly.
And their jarring presence, this sense of discord, I think is a potent expression of the painter's interest in representing God's willingness to reach down to our
There's
imperfect
the
world.
hand.
One of the other things that I'm really struck by is the gold embroidery and the figure on the right just playing the organ and the ermine on her gown, and even the attention that's being paid to the tiles on the floor, the pipes of the organ. We have that thing that happens in the Northern Renaissance where artists pay an enormous amount of attention to things that are seemingly unimportant, but we know that the artists of the Northern Renaissance lavish so much attention and care and detail and clarity on objects because they represent the heavenly and the spiritual. They link us to the heavenly and the spiritual.
It does something else as well, which is it makes concrete the heavenly world, and it makes it so understandable. It also makes it very believable, in this sense, very tangible.
And in the scene below, when we see an image,
I think, you saw the letters that were shown there. I think that was, a transliteration of the Hebrew Sabaoth, it sort of looked like. Which is one of the names for God, Yahweh Sabaoth, or Lord of Hosts.
there's four groups of people coming toward a scene at the center, which is an altar with a lamb, and the lamb has a wound in its side and is bleeding into a chalice.
Because the Lamb, of course, is a symbol of Christ's sacrifice. And yet here we have this Lamb that has overcome any earthly pain, any earthly suffering, and is here functioning in the purely symbolic realm.
And surrounding that altar, we have angels who carry the instruments of Christ's suffering, the cross, the crown of thorns, the column that he was bound to when he was flagellated. And so we have the sense of sacrifice for man, this is redemption.
And then man, in these four large groups, come to pay homage.
And we have prophets and saints and popes and figures from the Old Testament who all make their way toward Christ. And below that, the fountain of life, which has a stream that leads out and down toward us and toward the altar and the chapel.
This is all played out in this glorious and divine landscape, this gem-like landscape, where there's a kind of specificity that is overwhelming visually. Every leaf is rendered, every window pane in the city beyond is rendered. You have not only a sense of the magnificence of God's realm, but you have a sense of overwhelming awe, because our eyes are incapable of taking in this much visual information simultaneously. This is a painting that's almost cinematographic, and you have to look through it over time in order to be able to take it all in. It is simply too much.
And so in a way, it suggests a kind of vision that transcends human vision, a divine vision. And in fact, one of the things that's said about Van Eyck as an artist is that he had an eye like a microscope and a telescope, showing us things very far away as though they were under a microscope, a kind of vision that only is possible for God.
So this juncture between man's limited vision, which we feel as we look at this painting, and this notion of God's complete vision.
Through this painting, transcending our earthly realm and coming face to face with God.
I will take a look at it. Although we've seen it for quite a while, and this is not as clear, maybe as the video picture was. Any comments about this particular part. They didn't mention, I don't know if you thought of this, but when they were showing God the Father with Mary on one side and John the Baptist, there's a thought, oh, where are the other members of the Trinity? Well, of course, Jesus is here in the Lamb, and I think there's the Holy Spirit. So he's represented as well. I read somewhere how many different kinds of plants that he has in this, and I can't remember what the number was now. It runs in my mind it was 400 and some, or maybe something like that. Just an astounding number of different plants that are represented in this painting.
How big is that painting? Roughly?
I don't have any figures on that. Sorry, I didn't think to look that part up.
I know a lot of paintings that seem really detailed are actually fairly large.
Yeah.
I've seen in front of it, that it-
Well, if it's the same size altarpiece that we saw in Germany, it would probably be side to side from the end of that table to the end of this table. But I don't know if that's true of this one or not.
It's not like a little painting. drawing,
No,
obviously.
yeah.
Too much detail for that.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. mural.
And here's a close-up of the lamb. I'm impressed by the drops of blood splashing out. And apparently some blood running down because it's dripping down here. Anybody able to read the words that are on the altar there? Looks like Ecce Adonis Day, behold, the man of God. Maybe which takes away the sin of the world. It's like the last word is mundi, which is the world. I can't read the other ones, but that's what it says.
Bill, do you know how long it took him to do this?
No, no. It was completed in 1432. But never mind how that starts out with Ecce. Ecce is the Latin behold. Reminds me of something I came across when I was looking up Renaissance paintings. A lot of these paintings, because they're so old, need restoration because they, acquire a lot of grime and all that over the years. But it's a very precise process. You really have to know what you're doing. And there's one painting called Ecce Homo, behold the man, that a woman decided to, on her own, restore, and she turned it into a monstrosity. Look it up. It is really, it kind of looks like Scream, only it's worse. So she really messed it up. So don't do what you're not qualified to do. Jan van Eyck's meticulous attention to detail, as we've seen here, the mastery of color. I mean, just all the color that he uses that we see. Innovative use of oil paint set new standards in art. His work epitomized realism, left an indelible mark on late medieval art. His ability to capture intricate details and convey depth through oil paint revolutionized the artistic landscape of his time, according to one of the places I looked. All right, any final comments or questions before we go on to the next guy? Okay, next is Peter, and I'm pronouncing it Bruegel. I'm not sure if that's correct or not. Peter Bruegel the Elder. Does that sound right? I hear somebody.
It's on the right.
Oh, do you need it?
I thought. You can show a lot of pictures then.
Is that enough for everybody? He was considered the greatest Flemish painter of the 16th century. Here's an example of one of his landscapes. He was known for his landscapes. And also his vigorous, often witty scenes of peasant life. This is a peasant wedding that he painted around 1568. This is oil on wood. He exerted a strong influence on painting in the Low Countries, Netherlands, Luxembourg, Belgium. And through his sons, Jan and Pieter, he became the ancestor of a dynasty of painters that survived into the 18th century. Again, all the detail there. Pretty realistic, maybe not quite as realistic as Van Eyck, but still pretty good. A lot of detail in there. Anything that stands out to you?
I think pouring liquid has to be difficult.
Paint?
Does it have a pizza there? Yeah.
Well, it looks like this guy's playing a bagpipe.
On the right side.
Oh, yeah.
Which one?
In the center, where the green grapes coming down.
Yeah.
See her in the center?
Oh.
Looks like she's praying.
Oh, your hands are folded.
She like the bride or something.
Uh,
I've seen this at our homeschool co-op.
Maybe.
before, But it's been a long time. I'm trying to remember.
Of course, there's always the kids sneaking some food off and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the next one. This is called The Harvesters. Taking a break. Mhm.
Thereabouts, Netherlands.
Yeah. Oh, there's the sea out there. Like a hay wagon in the distance. It looks like a church building to the right behind the trees.
The tree.
Yeah.
Either. The harvesting and look at them.
I think even, thinking to add the detail of a branch sticking out without any leaves, a dead branch. Oh,
There's part of the sits sticking out. You think, that looks like a vase.
Looks like, thought maybe it was somebody's backside for them. Yeah.
Maybe it's the dog, is that the dog?
No.
And here's probably one of his most famous paintings. What's that?
Was that a real structure?
No, that's,
Or
that's
did he
the,
just create this
yeah,
as art?
yeah. That's the Tower of Babel. He shows it partially completed.
Look at the ship on the right side.
Yeah. A typical 15th century ship. I found it very interesting that I'm not sure what year, whether it was when the European Union first got started, or whether it was later on, but on one of their official stamps or something, they used this painting. You'd think something that was viewed so negatively, you wouldn't say, okay, this is going to be our symbol. But Tower of Babel, they're all working together to build a structure that would focus attention on themselves and build a name for themselves. And that's what the European Union is about. It's, not only eliminating borders in Europe and trade and all that, but very anti-Christian in the way that it has developed.
Where you say that name, because that's what I was zeroing on, it's Peter Bruegel.
Bruegel, yeah, I think I said it that way, didn't I? I stumbled into the light in that one. Okay, I think one more by him. Landscape with the Fall of Icarus. Icarus, if I remember correctly, was the youth who, with his father, built wings using wax and he flew too close to the sun. Isn't that Icarus? Sorry. And what was that associated with? They were flying out of something. And my mind not bringing that. I don't know if that's him there or something else, something else. Notice the plow, the little wheel in the front of it. Well, this would be a good illustration for what I'm going to be talking about in adult Bible study next Sunday morning. When Jesus says that discipleship involves not looking back. Yeah, that when you put your hand to the plow, and it's interesting that Jesus says your hand, not plural but singular, because we're used to two-handed plows. But in biblical times, just like here, you only had one hand on the plow, the other hand was used to, in biblical times, as a goad to, keep the oxen going. In this case, it's using what looks like a horse, but same idea, one hand on the plow, one hand to crack the whip or whatever. Anything else there? Then we have the medieval ships. Oh, okay, I take it back. There's another one. Oh, I got a couple more. This is the triumph of death. This has a lot of people in it, obviously, most of them dead or dying. And notice the purveyors of death seem to be skeletal figures. You can see them all over the place. Different methods of dying, people in different stages. Pardon me?
It's like an old timey, where's Waldo?
A rather gruesome, where's Waldo? It might be where's Waldo's head and where's the rest of it.
That's what Pastor points out, is that for the most of human history, death was an everyday part of our existence. Only in recent times in America has death been sanitized, cleaned, put into a funeral home somewhere. People died, they were laid out in their house, they were, you lived with it every day of your life. It was a reality.
Put on the dining room table.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
That's all that's available.
Well, these
guys over here. They've got crosses on their shields, looks like maybe crusaders, but they're all skeletons behind there. Bringing death. The animals are here are very thin. Look at how thin that horse is. This dog, that horse.
The skeleton up at the top right, about to run this guy through with a sword.
Yeah, chop off his head maybe. I'm not sure what these things are. But here's a guy hanging from a gallows.
What do you think the point of this was?
Maybe it's to depress people.
Into looking at death, I don't know.
This is a triumph, so what's triumphant about it?
Well, death is winning. Death has triumphed. And in a sense, this could be, the state of the world, the state, certainly we're all born under a condemnation of death. So,
What year?
1562.
Like, it's more sense. Are those skulls in the wagon?
Yes,
Wow.
yeah, that's a wagon piled full of skulls and that's like a shovel. I'm not sure what. Hold in there. This looks like a king, so doesn't matter if you're a king or not. Yeah, it's still fun.
I imagine we could look at that for a long time too. This one is called Dolle Griet, Mad Meg. 1562. I'm not sure who Meg is and why she's mad. But it looks like she's intent on doing something there. And I suppose mad. Let's see, dull. Dutch, German would be similar. I think that means probably more crazy than it does angry. So crazy Meg. This almost seems to me like Picasso-esque. There's some larger things that are larger than they should be, blended in and different shapes. This, I think, if I just saw this somewhere, I would not think of this as a Renaissance painting, probably. I mean, it's odd figure here. I'm not sure what's going on here.
Some kind of tree, there's like a whole big face.
Yeah,
Yeah, at first it looked like a pig snout to me, but then
yeah.
I saw that arch look like a
Teeth.
face then with teeth.
That's what I mean. It's
Very surrealistic.
yeah,
Fish mouth at the bottom right with the legs sticking out of it.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. All kinds of weird stuff.
I don't know. Did they have crazy mushrooms in the Netherlands? Yeah, they got some drugs from the East as well as spices. All right. Let's move on to another part of Europe, and that's Spain. A couple of painters in Spain that are well known. One is called El Greco, because he's not from Spain. He was from Greece. So they just called him the Greek. His real name was Dominikos Theotokopoulos. Real Greek sounding name, isn't it? He was a painter, sculptor, and architect in the Spanish Renaissance. He normally signed his paintings with his full birth name in Greek letters, often adding the word Chreis, which is Greek for Cretan. because he was born in Crete. At the time he was born there, Venice was dominating Crete. He lived in Venice and Rome before settling in Toledo, Spain. And there he painted many religious scenes, such as the crucifixion we see here. Now you can, I mean, if you get to know these painters a little bit, you can tell an El Greco just by the style, the colors, and the way he portrays people. Usually, you know, with a lot of darkness in the back and all that. He has a very distinctive way of painting his figures. And then these are close-ups from that painting. So we have the lady, I don't know if that's supposed to be Mary or who, on the left, and then on the right, we have a close-up of the bottom of an angel, it looks like, involved. And I'm not sure if the other person's an angel or not. Any comments there? Or observations? Okay, this is Holy Toledo. Well, he didn't call it that, but it's a view of Toledo where he lived, Toledo, Spain. He's fond of dark clouds, stormy clouds, seems. Dark backgrounds. Comments or observations? And this one is called the opening or the removal of the fifth seal in the Book of Revelation. I would have to say that El Greco is not as realistic as Van Eyck. I mean, and the Northern Renaissance painters are very realistic. And Greco doesn't fit that. He's more, again, he's almost a precursor to Expressionism or Cubism or some of the stuff that comes later. Picasso, I think, was also Spanish, wasn't he? Anyway, may have been influenced here. It's a famous painting of his of Saint Martin of Tours, the man who was compelled to give his cloak to a beggar and then became a monk. Many of you kind of combine some different methods or perspectives of painting such that he doesn't fit a particular mold, I guess. My information here says he's best known for tortuously elongated figures and often fantastic or phantasmagorical pigmentation, marrying Byzantine traditions with those of Western painting. And see, some of the coloring is similar to Byzantine. Well, here's another of his. And I don't know who that is, except that it appears by the shape of the cross that maybe that was St. Andrew, because that's Andrew's cross. I don't know who the person on the right would be. Okay, next is another Spanish painter that I like a lot better myself, and that's Velázquez. This is called The Ladies in Waiting. He was official painter to the court of Spain, and he did many portraits of royalty. One of the things that I remember seeing this in high school, Velázquez, of course, he painted himself into the painting the picture. Which was a guy back here as well. This is
like a portrait on the wall, or if it's a mirror, it's reflecting somebody looking at it, but it looks like they're more in a portrait style. And of course, here's the little girl that's the royalty. This person looks a little odd. I'm not sure
If it's someone who is a dwarf or,
Maybe she's kneeling.
no, here's
No.
here's the bottom of her dress.
Oh,
But again, we've got a mischievous boy putting his foot on the dog. Some paintings up at the top.
so another portraits. It became common to do portraits of people on horseback. I mean, they could do the horse and everything ahead of time and then just come in and paint the person. And maybe everything but the face ahead of time. Horse is rather chubby, isn't it? Here's the portrait of the Infanta Margarita, age 5. I'd like to be a 5-year-old and have to wear all that. Then he commemorated a Spanish victory against the Dutch in his surrender of Breda. So being Spanish, he thought that was a good thing. They defeated the Dutch. And here's a close-up. It's like the guy's handing a key to the city. Any comments there?
Facial expressions, like just the realism of the structure of the face. all
Yeah.
the Faces. It's really good. Light and shadows.
Yeah, and even the fact that the beard is not full, always there's some spots there that aren't filled in or they're more gray, you can't see them.
Although these poles both here and the other side of it. Well, these are perfectly straight. I guess there's some of them are a little bit of an angle.
what are the poles for?
I don't know if those are, they've got tips on the end, look like they're weapons. On both sides. Yeah, the guy handing over the key.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have thought maybe he would be Spanish, but he's the Dutch. Well, he spends a lot of time outside, I guess, fighting battles. Interesting where he placed a horse. Kind of front and center, and not a horse, but the rear end of a horse.
Another well-fed horse.
Yeah.
It's like a photograph instead of like something rearranged.
And just the way this guy's looking, I wonder if that's not Velasquez. I don't know, it kind of looks like him.
Because he had a habit of doing that, painting himself into paintings. One of the reasons I liked him. Trying to find, where's Velasquez? Like, where's Waldo? All right, one of my favorite painters doesn't come up as a Renaissance painter because he's kind of at the tail end. But I like him so much. And he's somebody that most people never heard of, at least in my experience. But I wanted to expose you to him. And his name is Caravaggio. How many of you have ever heard of Caravaggio? Okay. I just love how he painted. He's considered a pioneer of the Italian Baroque style. He was born Michelangelo Merisi in 1571. So you can see, whereas a lot of the Renaissance painters are 1400s, 1500s, he born at the end of that and really paints in the very end of the 1500s into the early 1600s. He was apprenticed to a painter in Milan before moving to Rome, where he had the opportunity to study the works of great Renaissance masters. It's likely that Caravaggio began his creative career with familiarity with Renaissance painters. Caravaggio's art was influenced by Moretto, Savoldo, Lotto, Palmavecchi, Giorgione, Titian, first guy I recognized, and Leonardo da Vinci. Caravaggio's art departed from the lingering aesthetics of Renaissance and Manneristic art, producing radical paintings with dynamic compositions, intense lighting, and unidealistic figures. That's what I like most about him, is just that the lighting and how realistic his figures are. He painted events in the Bible in all their bloody drama, as you can see on these. And I don't know if these are both the same event, just painted different times, or what.
That was an image, the same people from one of the scenes Michelangelo put in the ceiling in the Sistine Chapel. And I can't remember the name, but she was like the prophetess or.
Oh, Judith?
Maybe beheading, what's his name?
Yeah. But again, look how realistic it was, especially coming, after El Greco and a couple of the other, or even Bruegel. Very realistic. A lot of color, a lot of use of red. Of course, when you're doing blood, you got to have red, but the other stuff around is red also. And this, I believe, is David with the head of Goliath. And you don't see an idealized David. You don't see the perfect form David. You see somebody that looks realistically like David. Notice the bruise on Goliath's forehead. And the blood dripping down from his neck. Any other comments there?
His big head too.
What?
He has a big head.
A big head, yeah. Okay, this I believe is when the soldiers were torturing Jesus, blindfolded him and said, "Who hit you?" and all that stuff. You can see the red robe on him. Guy playing some kind of a horn. Now, one of the things that sort of clouds Caravaggio's reputation was his extracurricular activities, which I won't go into, but he was accused of murder. Oh, there goes a deer walking. By the way, I didn't tell you before, but it was snowing pretty hard a few minutes ago. But it's stopped now, so you don't have to look. Pardon me?
I said it was snowing and hailing before I came
Oh, really?
to class.
Huh.
Where I lived at, yeah, little teeny
Huh.
hail.
So anyway, Caravaggio, I mean, as much as I like him, I wish it wasn't true. He was kind of a nasty guy in his private life.
Looks like he had a short life.
Yeah. And I see if I don't remember what happened to him. He said one of the things it says here, he lived in violent times and he was as much sinned against as sinning. This is a grand painting of Jerome. Remember Jerome, he always has that skull. We don't see a lion this time, but Jerome is writing. You've got the red robe again, just black in the background. These are some close-ups from some of his work. I like the what seems to me a pensive look on the face of this young lady. There's an older lady. Got a lot of the detail right. There's Thomas examining, which he never actually did, but a lot of people think that they picture him as looking at the wound in Jesus' side, sticking his finger in it. But the other disciples are looking intently also. And again, the detail.
Jesus, it's like Keanu Reeves.
Hmm.
Years ago.
Looks like Thomas needs a tailor.
And again, the use of light, you can see that obviously there's light on Jesus and on the front of the face of Thomas, although, you know, the rest of it is cast in shadow. The man behind him is in shadow, but the one further back has light reflecting off his bald forehead.
One guy had like a darker complexion, black hair and kind of a brown.
Yeah, and I don't, I assume that was maybe because he's in shadow, but maybe not, maybe he was darker. All right, so that's Caravaggio, and that completes our look at the artists, the painters, I should say, of the Renaissance. At this point, could you pick out a favorite? Who did you like the best, or can you remember them all? Look over your notes. Who did you like?
Who was the first one of the Europeans?
First one.
You did the wood carvings.
Oh, Dürer, Albrecht Dürer. Yeah, yeah. I like him a lot. And he was such a man of God as well. Caravaggio, I really like his painting, but he was not a man of God, unfortunately.
Yeah, with you. Like the style, I like the.
To me, when I go into an art museum, the paintings I like the most are the ones that look like photographs. And I suppose that's not a very sophisticated way of looking at paintings, but I like the ones that look like they really are something. But I suppose people that are real artists don't see it that way. I don't know. Anybody else?
Even something just like this picture here. How he even made everybody's ears look quite different.
Oh,
You know, facial features too, but that's really putting some thought into it.
yeah. And the noses.
Different.
I like how Jesus was guiding his hand. See that? Thomas had one hand on his hip and Jesus is guiding his finger.
You see, that's not in the Bible.
Well, Jesus tells Thomas, put your hand, but he never does. He just falls to the ground and says, my Lord and my God. Even though he had said that's what he wanted to do. Jesus said, well, come and do it. But he doesn't. Anybody want to pick out a favorite?
Maybe it's so far back, but it doesn't look like his eyes even looking at it. Yeah.
Who? Thomas's eyes?
Yeah, it looks like he's like looking somewhere else, but feeling it.
No, I think his eyes are directed there. Yeah.
And so are the other guys. They're both looking at that same spot. Any other favorite artists? All right, let's go into what'll be a shorter experience looking at architecture. Same characteristics of architecture that we also saw in painting, and that is symmetry and balance. What happens on one side happens on the other. And also the use of classical features like columns and domes. Architecture symbolized rebirth more than the other arts, according to some scholars anyway. Renaissance architecture emphasized Roman architecture with its symmetry, mathematical proportions, geometrically perfect designs, regularity of parts, orderly arrangements of columns and lintels, regularly divided surfaces, and semicircular arches and hemispherical domes. With its dependence on Roman architecture, I, as little as I know, would take issue with the fact that architecture was more rebirth than the other arts. I think painting, to me, is goes well beyond what was there before. All right, so we're looking at architecture and sculpture together. Lorenzo Ghiberti is one of the first well-known architect sculptors, and the reason I put together is because so much of architecture includes sculpture. So, for example, this one, it's sculpture, but it's part of a bronze door for a church in Florence. And this is more of a relief sculpture, you know, that stands out from a wall, or in this case, a door. You can see lots of detail around the sides, the picture in the middle itself. I'm amazed that people are able to carve these things.
Do you think on wood or marble?
It looks to me like it was marble. The part of somehow, I'm not sure how, put on a bronze door. Let me see if I've got, I think I've got a. So it's like, yeah, it's like this. Yeah, panels on a door. So that's Ghiberti. That's all I've got. Any observations or questions or comments? Don't ask me any questions, just if you have comments. Yeah, it'd be a wonderful thing to visit. Of course, you have the sculptures up above the door that are regular sculptures. All right, the next guy is Filippo Brunelleschi. He did his work in the early 1400s. He's an Italian architect, designer, goldsmith, and sculptor. He's considered to be a founding father of Renaissance architecture. He's recognized as the first modern engineer, planner, and sole construction supervisor. In 1421, Brunelleschi became the first person to receive a patent in the Western world. He is most famous for designing the dome of the Florence Cathedral and for the mathematical technique of linear perspective in art, which governed pictorial depictions of space until the late 19th century and influenced the rise of modern science.
What did he design?
I'm sorry, what?
What did he design?
He designed this the dome, especially, I guess, in the whole building, I think. The Florence Cathedral. Well, he designed the dome, I guess, of the Florence Cathedral. Next is someone maybe a little more well-known to you, Donatello. Or is he one of the Ninja Turtles? This guy's interesting because he did two Davids, and we'll look at them. Donatello, then in his early 20s, was commissioned to carve a marble statue of David in 1408 to be placed on the tribune of the dome at one of the buttresses on the north side of the Florence Cathedral that we just saw. And this is what he carved. We'll do a close-up of David there. And this is made of bronze. Which I think means that it had to have been made out of a mold. Is that right? I mean, I don't know how you do this. With such detail in a mold, because you're doing on the inside of whatever the bronze is being poured into.
Maybe you move that. Like the target first and then maybe the mold and then pour the metal into the mold.
Yeah, I guess you'd have to. I don't know. One of the interesting things about this, of course, this is David standing over the head of Goliath. And it's hard to see. In fact, I saw it before and I'm trying to. Unless I'm thinking of the other one. I thought his foot was here in Goliath's hair, but I can't make out exactly what that is. But he does another David later on. Oh, by the way, his bronze David. Wait a minute. That's not. Oh, I'm sorry. This is marble. I'm thinking of the next one. This one's marble. So forget what I said about being bronze. The next one is bronze, and you can tell the difference. And this David was the first freestanding nude male sculpture since antiquity. So this predates Michelangelo and all that. And it was commissioned by the Medici family. Now, what's the first thing you notice about this sculpture besides being nude? What?
It kind of looks like a woman's face.
Yes, not only face. The way he's standing, even the hat, all looks very feminine to me. Yeah, I mean, even the way he's standing, with his legs, and I would say even the kind of the shape, his body shape. I mean, there's only one thing.
Small arms.
Yeah, muscular. There's only one thing in the statue that lets you know that it's not a female. Even the way he's holding the sword is a feminine way of holding it. And
How would a guy hold it like this? On the back?
well, notice how his arm is kind of curved. It's like, it's like a woman holding a parasol or something. Not not gripping it. And when you look at his head, it doesn't help any.
No, it looks very down. It looks like a woman on my head.
And the chest even.
Dainty features.
Now, remember before I think it was Michelangelo, we said that when he, on the Sistine Chapel, when he painted figures of women that kind of looked like men, because that's what he knew how to paint. Well, I don't know, maybe this guy didn't know how to paint men, but this definitely is a feminine looking David. And then, oh, this is what I was thinking of. His feet are tangled up into the beard of Goliath. Any other comments?
He was just trying to present him as a young boy. against
Maybe
this
that's
mighty
it.
Goliath. And here's this mighty
Before he
guy,
became manly.
this little kid, not
Yeah.
with a sword, but with a stone brings him down. You know, he wasn't
Yeah.
masculine, he wasn't a
Yeah.
big warrior, he was the servant of God.
Maybe that's all there is to it. I don't know, but it just seemed kind of weird to me.
No, I think God wants to put 20th century America, 21st century America.
Well, there, you know, if you look at the private lives of a lot of these guys,
I know, but it just, I think.
I don't know about Donatello. He also carved many figures of men on horseback. Oh, here's one of his carvings before we get to the horseback. That's St. George. And below it actually is a relief he did of St. George on horseback. We'll look at a close-up. St. George killing the dragon. Famous story from the Middle Ages. But that's his most famous statue of St. George in his armor. All right, so that's Donatello. And let's see, how much time do we have left? I know we've talked about Michelangelo before, but I hadn't done a lot of study about his work in sculpturing. And so I want to return to Michelangelo. And there's not enough time to do him justice in what we have left. So next week, we are going to look at Michelangelo. We're going to revisit the Pieta that we looked at before. I've got some better pictures, as well as some other things. Not only that, but also talk a little bit about his spiritual journey. And then next week, we'll also talk about Renaissance music and then wrap up the Renaissance with some observations, some positives and negatives and all that. Okay, any final questions or comments about anything?
Pretty jealous. My Facebook friends was in Rome and Florence last week.
Oh.
Pietà and David and have to cook with an Italian chef and all that stuff. Some Trevi Fountain.
Yeah, Beth has talked to me for years about going to Italy. And I said, one of the places I want to go is Florence. I just want to see the stuff there. But it turns out that trip didn't work out. So we're going to do a river cruise from where? Holland, Rotterdam, to Romania. So we'll see some interesting things. But
That should be some one Romania.
yeah, Budapest is where we'll end up. So it should be nice, relaxing, plus see some nice things along the way. And parts of Germany that we hadn't seen before. But I feel badly not seeing Italy. But so this is probably our last trip, but that's can't go everywhere we want. All right, any other comments, questions, complaints? All right. Let's see, we'll have next week, and then we'll have a week off for Easter, right?